Everybody's here. Traffic's fierce out there, so I am calling the meeting to order 1 minute late, but I think for a legitimate reason, traffic apparently is really difficult. At this time, I would entertain a motion to designate Isaac Ulrey as our treasurer pro tem.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that not Isaac, but Nikki be our treasurer pro tem. State law does not allow us to do that. It has to be one of us. Let's try that again. I would entertain a motion to have Nikki be our treasurer pro tem.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded that Nikki be our pro tem. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Oh, I think, I don't know, who would call the roll?
We can, yeah, we all said
Aye
aye.
is fine.
Okay.
We're good.
All right, however you want to do the minutes. Motion passes. Nikki, do you have something to say?
Isaac, would you please take over the duties of calling roll call and for passing of the motions today? Thank you very much.
Okay, Nikki has assigned her duties as treasurer pro tem to Isaac. Thank you, Isaac. Okay, at this time, I will do introduction. Oh, first, Mr. Ulrey, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis,
Yes. Present.
Mrs. Hudson,
Present.
Mrs. Lloyd,
Present.
and Mr. Wilson.
Here. All right. Let me quickly do introductions. To my far left, on your right, is Board Member Kelly Davis. Normally sitting next to her would be Board Member Jennifer Best, but she is off the mainland. She's not around on the mainland anywhere, but she is going to try to listen in or watch live stream if she's got Wi-Fi. Then next to me is, I'm told, I don't know firsthand, but I'm told one of our superstars in the treasurer's office, Isaac Ulrey, and he's filling in for TJ Cusick, who's got a family situation that he has to take care of today. So thank you very much, Mr. Ulrey, for filling in. I'm Charlie Wilson. I'm the school board president this year. Next to me is our superintendent, Dr. Trent Bowers. Next to him is our board vice president, Nikki Hudson. And next to her, on my far right, to your far left, is board member Amy Lloyd. Before we say the Pledge of Allegiance, I would like to acknowledge that today is Patriot Day. This is the day of remembrance in the United States because of all the people killed in the 9/11 attacks. Today, we commemorate the lives that were lost and the first responders and heroes who risked their lives saving others during the 9/11 attacks. I'd like for us to take just a very brief moment of silence. Thank you very much. Now would you stand for the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, I would feel it was in order. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda as it was set forth Thursday, made available to the public. And I'm not aware of any changes or amendments, but we can discuss those if there are any after we've got a motion. We have a motion to approve the agenda of the Board of Education meeting.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. We approve the agenda of the Board of Education meeting. Does anyone have any amendments or discussion of that? If not, Mr. Ulrey, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd,
Yes.
and Mr. Wilson.
Yes. Motion passes. Are there any public comments? There are no public comments, so we will go directly to the superintendent's report.
Thank you, Dr. Wilson. So our mission in Worthington Schools is to empower a community of learners who will change the world. We do that through our 4 vision statements. So our first vision statements, we will engage each student with diverse opportunities to maximize every student's potential. And my update here is that we're excited this year to be offering advanced quantitative reasoning, a new Algebra 2 equivalent course option at the high schools. So the course is up and running in both of our high schools with a total of 150 students enrolled in this course. The Ohio Department of Education describes the advanced quantitative reasoning course as the application of basic mathematics skills such as algebra to the analysis and interpretation of quantitative information, so numbers and units, in real-world context to make decisions relevant to daily life. So critical thinking is its primary objective and outcome. The course emphasizes interpretation, representation, calculation, analysis, synthesis, assumptions, and communication. And we think it's a really good math option into our high school curriculum this year, so we're excited about that. Our second vision statements, we will provide a safe environment where every student can grow intellectually, emotionally, socially, and physically. My update here is that our school district is committed to promoting a learning environment that respects and values diversity, equity, and inclusion in order to create a culture of acceptance and that celebrates and empowers differences. So for many of our students in our schools, the observance of religious or cultural traditions is an important part of their personal, family, and community life. These traditions help students understand and preserve their own value systems, cultures, customs, and histories. So our Board of Education Policy 5200 provides an excused absence for observation or celebration of a bona fide religious holiday. Just want to remind guardians that they should notify the school office when their student will be absent for religious leave. Communicating that leave in advance with our students' teachers will aid teachers in accommodating our students. Our student handbooks share the full language of our religious leave policies. So if you want to check out that, all of our student handbooks have that religious leave holidays. But with the Jewish holidays coming up next week, we wanted to make sure this is top of mind for our families. Our third vision statements will provide we will provide consistent communication and promote dialogue with our community. We're excited that this week we began our Portrait of a Learner process. We have almost 200 community members, so business owners, families, staff members, students, et cetera, who have committed to engaging with us in person throughout this fall as we work to create our Portrait of a Worthington Learner. So we're really looking forward to working with this community team to set the direction for the school district. We appreciate this robust group of volunteers and their willingness to invest their time and effort into engaging with the public school district. And that kicks off for us Wednesday night at Worthington Kilbourne High School, so we're super excited there. And then our fourth vision statement is that we'll be responsible and transparent with our community resources. Many have seen that new exterior signs were installed recently at Linworth Experiential and Evening Street. They've received significant positive feedback, and so we're pleased with the impact that they should have long term. Our landscape maintenance team is currently assessing all school signs in the district based on age, condition, et cetera. Our plan is to put a replacement schedule together as we had previously done with our elementary playgrounds. So by the end of September, we hope that we're able to share that schedule based on age and condition. And then additionally, our business department has been actively working with real estate professionals as we seek a new space for our landscape maintenance department. So the current building is behind Evening Street. It's certainly unsuitable, and thus our hope would be within the year, we may have secured a new space and have a plan in place for removal of the current building. Just want to make sure that's on everybody's radar, so stay tuned. So Dr. Wilson, that's my report.
Thank you very much. Any questions, discussion? Okay. We won't have a treasurer's report tonight since our treasurer is not here. Are there any board or committee reports or announcements?
I'll share the obvious. We all know this, but we were all at the Urban Board Symposium today, all meeting us 4 board members. And given that this is really the opportunity and the venue in which we can discuss our takeaways from that collectively, I wanted to encourage us to do that. I don't know if we want to do that now or at the end in that like other portion of our agenda, but I felt like there were some valuable and meaningful things that were shared today that emphasize things we've already been discussing, some new ideas, and that it would be worth the four of us taking a moment to discuss that, to discuss our learnings from the day. So
Would-
whenever we feel like that's an appropriate time to do
Would
so.
you be willing to kick it off, given my aging brain? I sometimes forget things, so.
Yeah, I'd be glad to.
to
So
the meeting.
I will tell you two things that, I mean, there were lots of powerful points from today, but two things that stuck out to me were one about the need to be very candid and authentic with the community at large about the challenges that public education faces. And we've talked about that previously in the context of the legislative updates. And can we as a school district provide our broader community with more insight into, like everyone can say you want choice in public education, but no one talks about what that choice comes with as it's implemented by our state legislators. So, you know, we've talked about, can there be a consistent place in maybe the new newsletter that's being distributed in lieu of why can't I think of the old newspaper? This week, thank you. So it re-emphasized for me that need for us to put that out to our broader community. I will tell you, I was the one who sat at the table that was like, could OSBA give us some snippets, right? It would be really helpful that if in addition to the legislative update, they provided us with digestible snippets that we could then push out to our broader community so that these are just facts, right? This is the reality of what's being passed at the State House and the impact it has on public education as a whole and our district. And then the other part was when we talked about in our small groups about collaboration and partnerships within the community. And oh my gosh, I'm forgetting exactly a community strategic plan. I knew you would remember this because when I said it, when I reported out on my table, Kelly looked at me and shook her head. That if you think about building more partnerships within our community to assist our students. So whether we're talking about our students who have wraparound needs, or we're talking about the fact that the economy and jobs trajectory for our students don't look the same as it did for prior generations. There are, the generation of our children, they're not going to get likely one job and stick with it for the rest of their lives, right? Their career is going to look much different than that. And so entrepreneurship and whatnot, and potential partnerships with chambers of commerce and all kinds of opportunities there. There was a nugget I heard in the conversation at my table, which was what I said, which was start with a community strategic partnership and bringing people together and having the community define what that should look like for the betterment of our students, because then you get buy-in on the front end versus us talking about, if we partnered with this person, or we partnered with this company, or if we partnered with this organization, this is what we could potentially bring to the table to help our students. If we brought them all to the table and we all collectively talked about what that could look like, you get buy-in from the beginning, and possibly some ideas that we alone may not have thought of that would benefit our students, that diversity of thought at the table. So Charlie, those were the two things that I wanted to make sure that we all heard, but I would love to hear what you walked away thinking about, like, I would love it if we took action on this, or this would be really helpful if we implemented, or we're doing that, and that's exactly what they said.
For the sake of continuity and making it make sense, at this time, I would like to ask Amy well, first, Amy, if you have any, we'll go back to board announcements and committee reports later, but I'd like to stay focused on this topic rather than jumping all around.
Sure. Yeah, and if we want, I mean, if it wants to be a conversation, that's
Right.
fine too. Like,
I'm
we
strongly in favor
we
of
can't,
conversation.
you
We
know,
can't.
so because I'll talk a little bit more about what you were talking about. I wrote down community-driven strategic plan, which was interesting to hear that. I think we heard that in the second group session that we had, but I think prior to that, or maybe not, might have been the table I was at. I was sitting with a school board member from Toledo, and they were talking about how they had just gone through that process of updating their strategic plan. And they talked about how then they also use that in all their committee structures, and how, which I would like to understand that a little bit more, how that drives their, because she was talking about their administrative committees, like what we have, not necessarily. She didn't mention board committees, so I'm not sure how many board committees Toledo has. But anyways, I just thought that was interesting and that you brought that up as part of one of the things that you wanted to,
takeaways.
you know, have as a good takeaway.
May I interject to
Yeah,
create
absolutely.
a conversation on just
Yeah.
that issue?
Yeah.
First of all, we don't even have a strategic plan, but we do have a very good mission and vision, which was done by community. I mean, there were many meetings involving large numbers of community members to create our current plan. And again, leading on to this discussion, this is the first organization, obviously I've never been on a school board before, but this is the first organization I've been involved on without a strategic plan. But we do have we do as a board with no community engagement, we spend a whole day every single year coming up with board goals in collaboration with our administration every year, so I don't mean the fact I said we don't have a strategic plan to be intended as a criticism, because I think essentially we're doing almost a yearly strategic plan, but
Well, you could almost envision that it would be really surprising if those goals don't align with a strategic plan. But if you go through the process of having that strategic plan, then you have that community support for the work that you're doing and you're constantly improving on an annual basis. It's just it's arguably a missing piece, right? That ties very much to, because you said community driven, ties very much to the community's alignment. Like I do believe that they support the work, the hard work that our administration and everyone in this district is doing. Maybe it's a more public way of ensuring that alignment exists and that support is there.
Yeah, I would agree with that, because I think I don't disagree with you, Charlie, from the standpoint of we do have board goals and we do work with the administration every year to update those, and the administration spends a lot of time sharing with us what all the work has been done within each of those goals. I'm not sure how much of that is public facing in a way that our average community member knows about it.
And I
And
don't
so-
know that it needs to be. I'm sorry.
Well,
for
and maybe it
interrupting
doesn't need to be, but I think, I don't know.
But there's
Perhaps
that-
there's a piece there, like you said,
Yeah.
that could bridge that somehow. I don't know exactly what the answer is, but anyways, I have other things
Yeah.
I can share, but we can
Kelly,
continue
did you
on.
have
Did
any
you have something?
reaction?
Well, just the part that I will add to that was when you mentioned our mission and our vision statement. That was before my time,
Right.
but that wasn't a community engagement
Mhm.
process. And so maybe if we can even familiarize ourselves with, in general, how that process worked, what that process looked like. And so we can remind the community that this mission and vision statement isn't just something Dr. Bowers came up with or our amazing administrators came up with, but it is something that collectively as a community, we all came up with together, right? So it's before my time on the board, but still significant. And so that's more recent. I mean, do you remember the year? What year was it?
Sure.
You remember?
Obviously, we're cold calling on you.
Yeah, no, I mean, so our mission and vision has been 8 years.
Okay.
I mean,
It was
so
short after you
we've-
became
And we have
chair.
felt like that it's still relevant, right? That people still find meaning in that. So we haven't felt like that is something to update. I would say our Portrait of a Learner process that we're about to kick off is a significant community engagement effort,
Absolutely.
right? And so it is
Absolutely.
200 community members, business members, families, students, staff members. So like we are attempting to engage the entire community in this creation of
Right.
what do we want a Worthington learner to look like. So, you know, I think we would work hard on community engagement, whether that includes the city saying, hey, we're going to intentionally do this to support kids in our community, right? Whether that be crosswalks, sidewalks, crossing guards, play areas, right, that might benefit kids, in the library saying we're going to intentionally do this to wrap around the needs of our kids. And I mean, I think, you know, when you think about community strategic plan, it's to me different than the school district engaging the community. I think we have efforts to do that. Master facility planning was significant engagement, will be again. It's really saying, I don't know whether the school district leads it, but it's really saying, how does everybody pull on this rope equally for the benefit of kids in our community? Maybe equally, maybe isn't the right word, but what role does each group play in this? Yeah.
That was a big part of
So-
the conversation. That was actually the initial part of our conversation today. We had two segments where they facilitated conversation with us. And the first piece was, how do you engage your entire community, your city officials, your local leaders, your community groups, and things like that. So your point with the Portrait of a Learner, you know, there are obviously lots of pockets that we're hitting, that Angie is hitting and her team and us collectively, that are bringing people together, right, to have this conversation of what path are we on here in the Worthington School District.
Yeah, and then we would plan the next year to bring another large group together to look at facilities again, right? And so that's another, like, lots of touch points. Some people have kids in school, some people don't, like that whole, you know, so I do feel like as an organization, we strive to be community driven,
Absolutely.
but different than necessarily bringing everybody together to say, you know, here's how the Youth Booster organization is going to intentionally do X in our community, and I don't know. So,
But as I recall, our mission and visioning process was very intensive with lots of community engagement, and not just community, as I recall, I believe we involved our staff and our teachers.
yeah, we did. I mean, it was
Well.
similar to this Portrait of a Learner process that we're going to go through. It was obviously, you know, a tweak on that, but it was the same sort of process where we met for months in large groups of people and everybody having input in the process, and came out with a mission, and then, you know, we reflect honestly yearly to say, is it time to go through that process again, or does the current mission still encompass what, you know, we want to accomplish? And right now, it feels like it still resonates with the community, and therefore we've been hesitant to engage in that process. Therefore, we've moved to a Portrait of a Learner process, and we've, you know, again, we'll get back together for master facility planning in a year or so, sometime around there.
And so there's two aspects. There's, first of all, bandwidth issues. If you have too many large-scale community engagements going on at the same time. And then secondly, you have community engagement fatigue. The community may get a little, you know, especially if we've got 2 or 3 going on at the same time. And, you know, facilities next year is going to be a big win, obviously.
Charlie, that's where my mind went to too, which is that, you know, pointing out the strategic plan component was not to say that we're not community driven and we're not bringing together the community. We are. We actually have had a lot of community driven needs for plans, such as the facility task force, such as previously the mission and vision. And so it almost seems like we haven't done the strategic plan component, and now we're doing the Portrait of a Learner because our focus has been on other aspects that were more pressing, where we needed that community-driven approach. And I personally will just put that strategic plan kind of in the back of my head personally to continue to think about how that could potentially serve us from an alignment from a community standpoint as to, you know, roles that different players in our community roles that they have in supporting our students.
I also think it's important for us to just engage the community, not necessarily under a specific structure, but like as long as we're continuing to attend activities, attend events, engage with those community leaders, and as a one step, as all of us as board members, I know our administration does a great job with that. But just making sure that we're doing that as a continuous, right? It's a consistent effort that we're doing as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, Amy, I cut you off where you got to a second takeaway, but I was trying to facilitate discussion.
Too, anytime when we gather in groups at an OSBA, sorry, my microphone's not on. Thank you, Corey. Anytime we gather, I think in groups with OSBA and with other school districts, we hear different terminology for things that districts are using that we may, like we're talking about, we may already be doing a lot of those things. They're just pieces of, right? So, I think it's always good to reflect on it. And like you said, kind of tuck it away and say, how does this all fit with what we're doing, right? So, yeah, I have a couple other things that I just wrote down that were impactful to me today. Our first speaker that we heard talked about empathy, respect, and how to live in a diverse world. So I'll just share a few of those. I wrote down collaboration means that we're stronger together. I think that's absolutely true. We must invest in our young people. And what is the cost of doing nothing? I thought those were really impactful things that I heard today. Along with something that I think Kelly just said about sharing with the community what we're doing in that community engagement piece. Sorry, my notes are kind of all over the place from today. There were lots of good thoughts. Highlight the positives that are happening in our schools and with our students, which I think we do that. We can always work to do that better, right? So I guess I'll just leave it at that with my things I wrote down for today and let somebody else share. So.
Excellent.
No, I'm like Amy, my notes are all over the place. So this is definitely something that I want to sit with and really reflect upon, because I do think that today was super valuable. Because it had so many components, we were able to talk with other school board members from across Ohio, from different areas, right? Urban areas, suburban areas, rural areas. We were able to talk with OSBA staff, which, we don't always get an opportunity to do that. And we were able to hear from our state legislators. So our Senator Herschel Craig was there, and Representative Gerald was there. And I know you all know this, but I'm, letting people know. So listening to their presentation and what we can do as board members to support the work that they're doing at the State House was huge, very important. And that is where we heard what's the cost, like really the financial cost of doing nothing. And that eventually it will end up costing you a lot more, perhaps, than just doing the cost of what you should be doing in the first place. And then, of course, we had another group discussion and just the power of your statement. So as board members, we definitely have a lot of influence. We have a lot of decisions that we make. And just your words, your advocacy, how you're showing up for students, and how much power is in that alone was really a good point that I enjoyed. And then listening to students. I mean, we had 2 high school students, 2 college students, obviously, that all went through public education. And just hearing from them and their public education experience, obviously the 2 students that go to the Ohio State University.
I thought it was cute.
Go
They both said
Bucks.
that.
And just how their public education prepared them for their college experience now. And those students are going to change the world for sure. And so hearing from them and being able to ask them direct questions and get honest feedback, because our youth, they just tell it like it is. which I appreciate and are things that we need to hear and how we need to grow. So just hearing from the four of them was just wonderful. And then for those students to also have, two of the students had board members that were there from their district. And so that was just really sweet to see, like, board members being excited about their student there and engaging in conversation with all of us, a room full of people. And, one of the board members was extremely proud, well, both of them were extremely proud, but, came up and had that presentation with that student. So it was just a fulfilling day. Like, again, I say one that I will definitely look at my notes and reflect on and hopefully implement and discuss, continue discussion as we go forward. So I'm very grateful to OSBA and the different groups that put this program on today.
Any comment, reaction? Okay, I guess several takeaways for me, most of which have been touched upon already. But first of all, at the table, we switched tables and there was never more than two of us, and sometimes we were all by ourselves. We never had three at a table, so there was no sunshine. But one of the tables I was at, there was some discussion about having students as school board members, and we've tried that, I think, before any of the three of you were on the board. I don't know, Nikki, do we have a student member? We tried that, and it certainly seems like a great idea. And frankly, this is something I'm hearing from a number of community members as well. It seemed like a great idea, but my experience was we didn't get as much input. And generally, actually, to be honest with you, we've had more discussion, I think, at this meeting than we may have had at most of the meetings that I've been, or at all the meetings I've been a board member of. So this is not kind of the forum, the setting for hearing from a board member or a student board member or two, and you're only getting one from each school. It wasn't my idea because I really like the concept of student school board members, sitting up here and getting their input. But Dr. Bowers, I think it started with you, came up with the idea of having regular and many hearing sessions from many students, as you know, at each school. And I personally, I guess it doesn't have to be either or, but I find that so much more valuable. Two of us board members are always at each one of those, so it rotates, but I find those from hearing from students to be extremely valuable. But there was discussion at my table about student board members, having students come and speak at actually, the one board member talked about one board meeting a month, or having a panel of them, kind of like we did today. But we've got so many outstanding students. My only criticism of our current system is to make sure we have more representative students. And by that, I mean, I think our principals, do most of the selection, if not all the selection. But by that also, students that maybe are, the students we hear from are almost always the highly engaged students, almost always. One time we had, I think, the E team, the team that competes on computer
Robotics?
games. No, not robotics.
Esports.
Esports, that's it. Yeah, I couldn't think of it. And there, I think, were some, many of those kids were very involved, but some of them, they said this was really their only involvement in the school. So we got to hear from those away. And also students who have various challenges or learning disabilities or whatnot. We don't hear too much from them in these, but I like that. The other thought was actually several board members said that they have an avenue for middle school. And I don't believe we've ever really done anything at the middle school level, but and I haven't had time to process it or think it through. But that was those were things that resonated a little bit with me that we don't do, or we do. I just, in my personal opinion, I know there's a lot of discussion out in the public about student board members, but I just didn't find that to be, and we had great ones. So this is not intended as a criticism of the people that were here. It was so limited to, and it wasn't a good format. I know that it's a trend among some school boards across the country, but I just didn't find it as very beneficial.
I wasn't here, obviously, when they did that. That was a lot of a discussion. That was a discussion at both of our tables today. And a lot of people that spoke to the students talked about, like, the student ambassadors that Columbus Public has, and the board member from Toledo talked about it, and that they weren't students that were on city council, goodness, student council. You know, these are students that they're really trying to pull students that aren't usually raising their hand to come to these, but a lot of times, and maybe Angie will know, like when you would go out and you invite someone in, like how honored and privileged they feel to be invited to the table. So, something to think about. I don't, I've only experienced the student feedback. There could be some benefit to having someone consistently report to our board. It's just something to think about.
What would you think of the idea of, I think that when we have the student sessions, you sometimes ask us, is there anything that you would want to discuss? What if, and you just sent an email around about the next round of student sessions or student listening sessions. What if we were to ask during this school year, float that conversation to different groups? Obviously, well, actually, all of our conversations are at high school. I started to say obviously our high schoolers, but they're all at the high school level. But to just get different feedback from different pockets of our high school students as to the value of those conversations. And then if we were to have something like that at a board level, what are their thoughts about that? Or, obviously we can craft it more articulately than I just said, but you know what I mean? Use those sessions to gain their input on that proposal.
I'd also like to know, maybe, so when we have those student feedback sessions, which are very valuable, and then we come to this table and we share what happened, I would be interested in feedback on, are we sharing it properly? You know what I mean? Like, a student could say, well, that's not how I meant that, or that's not what I was trying to convey. And are we really utilizing our voice in the appropriate way that we're representing those students as we give feedback and share their stories with the rest of the board? So I don't know. I'd be interested to hear if we're doing a good job, or if they could say, could you elaborate on this piece more? And I'm sure, because we do hear from a variety of students, which I appreciate as well, you may get different feedback, but I would like to know, just, when you're sitting there and you're sharing with your colleagues, am I representing their voice appropriately?
Of course, we have real constraints given that we're doing it during the school day and taking them out of one period. I think we would all probably prefer not to take them out of more than one period. And but you get those time constraints, and then some people are silent. But my experience is very, very small, but I think I've had about 6 or 7 students after one of those email me about something or a little bit of that. So I always try to encourage them that I'm always available. And I can always find my email address on the school website. So I've gotten some of that follow up or attempt to say maybe I wasn't clear, or occasionally it's been from some students who didn't even speak, who said I didn't get a chance to speak. And I know you, and I know that Dr. Gupta used to always encourage them to speak with him. I don't know if you heard from any students, but we do try to foster that.
Yeah, it's a big part of what the students talked about today on that panel, was to listen, right, to understand. The one student said that a lot, listen, and so they do want to be heard. Now that's 4 students, right, but
Yeah,
just
and
an ongoing conversation just to see what works, what doesn't work, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
right, it was an interesting combination of students. It was 2 graduates, they're both at OSU, and then 1 senior, or 2 seniors, I guess. The other 2 were both seniors at 2 different high schools. So yeah, I just thought what they said was very valuable, and also goes to show what incredible students are being turned out by public education all across Central Ohio, certainly in our school district, but also those were four very impressive products of public education. The other,
Charlie, before you
Oh,
move on,
sure.
Pat, Kelly, I just wanted to say that I jotted down. I respect the concern to ensure that we're representing their voice appropriately, and I would think that we could put together, a couple bullet points or, after one of their meetings to make sure that what we're walking away with accurately represents what they felt like they expressed. And that perhaps that could be sent on behalf from the principal to those students who participate to say, and with us on copy, with whoever's there on copy, because then that gives them ease of access, right, for further conversations on anything or follow-up questions. You still only have the two board members. You don't have everyone on copy. And just a quick, this is what we're walking away from this conversation with. This is what we heard you say. Is this accurate? And it could also possibly be done at the end of the meeting versus even having to go out, via email. So just tossing that out. I think I value the concern and the desire. I'm not concerned, but desire to make sure we're accurately representing their voice. Yeah.
okay, two other quick takeaways. There was at one of my tables, there was a very robust discussion of the importance of having safe spaces where especially marginalized students and students who sometimes do not feel comfortable in school, having a safe place to go, and the ability of teachers to be able to express, this is a safe place, or this is a teacher or a counselor or whatever, or librarian that you can come to talk about issues, and just to be specific, in particular LGBTQ+, but other marginalized groups as well, and that you can do that without the same time having to foster or provide a forum for people communicating hate speech. And we got talking about gay pride flag and so forth, or ribbon or something that can be used to signal that for teachers who wish to do it, not forcing teachers to do that, but for teachers who want to do that. So that was one. And then the other one, to pick up on what you, Kelly, was saying about, engaging legislators, which raises a question here. Actually, the last I heard, I'm not sure whether the House is going to reconvene yet this fall or not. I've heard conflicting information on that, but I think the Senate is going to. But the question is, do we want to have some kind of a meeting with our state rep and our state senator? We've done that in the past, but it's been quite a few years since we've done that, and I thought they were always successful. But we have two state senator or state rep that have come on board since we last did that here. And I think, we did it then in special work sessions in the evening, and the turnout by the public wasn't great, but there were some people here, but it gave us as board members a tremendous opportunity to interact one-on-one with our state reps and our state senators. And I think they were very, very appreciative of that opportunity. I didn't any sense that they felt they'd been dragged there or that it was a waste of their time. And the other, also, I guess, something I'd never even thought of, but a couple people were they said they'd do it, and they think more state reps are going to do it. I just find it's so busy, so much going on first day of school anyway, but they said they bring in state reps, state senators on the first day of school, and or I guess one of them said that, and the other one said they wait a week or two into school so they can see a full day. And they said they've never had a state rep or senator turn them down, and basically start with the bus at 5 o'clock in the morning until the last sports team is finished practicing. And
That's a long day.
that's a long day, but we do have full-time state senators and state reps. But they said they've never had one not do it. It's something I never even thought of. It is a long day, and it
I-
requires a lot of coordination and whatnot. But their whole point was, and we've done this, actually, my recollection, we've only done this with our congressional representative, I think at Thomas Worthington a few years ago. Was that before you were superintendent? It was Representative, yeah. But their thing was bringing, let them see what a class actually looks like, what teachers actually do. But it is a lot of work doing that. But I have no reason to think our state senator or state rep wouldn't be willing to do it if they could schedule it into their schedule.
Well, I assume that's not the same purpose of the evening sessions.
Right.
And that the evening sessions are more opportunities for our community to actually have that connection and understand what their viewpoint on public education is, what they're supporting, what they're not supporting, to ask those questions.
Yeah, the framing of the ones we used to have here was more so they could hear what our views were on various educational issues. The boards, I don't recall there was no interaction with the community. As I said, the community attendance wasn't
Okay.
very large at those. It was more for them to hear us and for us to ask them questions. But it goes to, I think, an issue that I think maybe you were talking about was the notion that we need to do a better job of both informing ourselves, but also our community about, for example, the effect of universal vouchers.
Yes.
Or the effect that some of the already passed things in the budget bill or things that are still lingering, what those impacts would be. Mm-hmm. And we need to educate our community better about that because some don't understand the gross, even harmful impacts that both charter schools and voucher schools have and will have, especially with the enormous expansion of vouchers.
Yeah, I would fully support that. I assume that's something that we as a board need to initiate.
Right.
And looking at the calendar and figuring out a time that makes sense, obviously enough lead time to give them the ability to attend.
Right.
And but I think there's value in doing so. Absolutely.
You other two agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
If we find time, there's a lot of evening, like a work session.
Yeah, I mean, like.
It's the only way the five of us can be together.
Yeah, I think we should ask them what that's.
Okay.
We're asking them to come to us.
All right. That's all my takeaways. Any other?
Can I share one other one?
Yes, you may.
And we talked about this little afterwards. We talked at my table at one point about how to address hate, and when hateful comments are made during public comment section and the structure of our meeting, and that's not a space where obviously we engage with any public comment. And then do you say anything at the end of the meeting or not? Because those who are listening in aren't hearing those. I don't feel like there's any right answer to this, but I will tell you that one thing that was tossed out, and I almost felt guilty even saying it because our teachers do so much, but they said it's really powerful when teachers speak about their own experiences. And so when you think about the accusations regarding indoctrination, because we have a health curriculum that is full spectrum and is inclusive of all gender identities, and that it would be powerful to have a teacher talk about how beneficial that is or has been to potentially students. So I just toss that out there. I still struggle with the challenge of navigating hateful comments, and actually not just hateful comments, like inaccuracies, like saying things like we've banned books, which we don't ban books. And so how do you address that? And I still struggle with our current structure. And so I would encourage us to not think we've landed on the right answer, but continue to ruminate over what's the appropriate path forward in that space. And I don't have the answer, but but I'm still not I still think I think it's an ongoing issue and one that's not going away.
Part of that ongoing conversation,
Yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah, oh, yeah, and I fully concur in that, I mean, I don't have an answer, but I think we need to think about ways of making sure that accurate facts are getting out there and that inaccurate facts, whether it be, I mean, we've had claims that we've banned books, which is, as I've been told and have explored, we have not done that. There have been claims that we've had incidences of guns being found in our schools, when in fact, as I understand it, only twice in more than the past 10 years has a gun been found in our school in more than 10 years. And yet, we obviously, anytime there's a thought that there might be a gun, or somebody says there's one, or somebody says they think they saw one, or somebody says they have one, or we obviously call the police. So there's lots of police incident reports of, coming to our school to check out. But my understanding is only 2 in more than 10 years of an actual gun there. So but there's kind of this sense, either at statements at meetings or statements in the community, that we have a problem with guns being in our schools. But I guess that's just an example of the difficulty and what's the solution for getting the right information, accurate information out there. All right. Let's see, I detoured us by saying, let's focus on, I guess it was Nikki's idea.
Sorry.
Nikki, no apologies.
Thanks for the conversation.
We should do
though.
more of this. No, I want to say thank you all for engaging in the conversation. Thank you, Nikki, for initiating it. Did you have any more board or committee reports?
I have not had any committee meetings, no. Thank you.
Okay, Amy?
I have not either.
Okay, Kelly? Nor have I. So I believe we're ready to move on to actions recommended by the treasurer. Routine business. Our treasurer's not here, but we do know what our treasurer's recommended. So I would entertain a motion that we approve financial items D2 being the minutes, and D3 being the appropriations modifications. And so I would entertain a motion that we approve routine financial items D2 and D3.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the treasurer's routine financial items that he recommends. Any discussions? All right. If not, Mr. Ulrey, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes. Motion passes. We turn now to the personnel consent agenda. Dr. Bowers.
I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the consent agenda, items E2 through E8 on your agenda. The consent agenda, again, items E2 through E8, please.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Actually, technically, under Robert's rules, there's no discussion of the approval of a consent agenda. But if there's any questions, I'm not going to cut them off if anyone has questions or a statement they want to make about it. All right. If not, Mr. Ulrey, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes. Motion passes. The personnel consent agenda has been approved. Dr. Bowers, new business.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve the acceptance of donations, which is items EF on your agenda. We'd like approval for the donations that are listed here on the agenda on items F1, please. I don't know where EF came from.
Oh, good.
F1. Thank you.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the donations on F1. Any questions, comments, discussion? If not, Mr. Ulrey, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes. Motion passes. Dr. Bowers.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve item F2. Item F2 is confirming the impracticality of busing newly enrolled students to St. Andrews and Bishop Watterson. So the item's F2, and I just want to remind the board that we'll see this more often because as a student newly enrolls to one of the schools that we've marked as impractical previously, we now have to act on that student as they come in. So that's why you're going to continue to see these. So that's what you see in item F2.
May I have a motion approving the practical busing resolution?
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the impractical busing resolution. Any questions, comments, discussion? If not, Mr. Ulrey, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes.
Thank you. I'd like to recommend that the Board of Education approve item F3. F3 is a recommended motion to approve the continued enrollment of these 5 students whose legal guardians have moved from the Worthington School District. They're all seniors in the school district. Item F3, please.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded that we approve the superintendent's recommendation to approve the continued enrollment of, frankly, our current students who would like to remain our current students, even though their caretaker or legal guardian has moved out of the Worthington School District. Any questions, comments, discussion? If not, Mr. Ulrey, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis,
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson,
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd,
Yes.
Mr. Wilson.
Yes. Motion passes. Okay, at this time, a couple things I want to make sure I emphasize with respect to our calendar. Oh, I'm sorry. Are there any questions, concerns, requests by the board? Sorry. Yeah.
I have 2 things. One is probably faster than the other. For the delegate meeting for OSBA conference in November, you're our delegate, correct?
That's my understanding.
And then
Yes.
you're the alternate, is that correct? And so have you submitted that to OSBA? Is that something you have to submit? Keep hearing different information about whether that has to be notified to OSBA. or
Yes,
not.
and TJ has in fact submitted that.
Okay.
And I've in fact gotten something from them,
Okay,
which I don't think there's any problem with my forwarding that to the whole board. I think we've done that in the past, and
Yeah.
we just can't engage in discussion
right.
with all of us on an email chain, but we can certainly discuss it at a board meeting. So I will, prior to our next board meeting, I'll forward what I've received.
Great.
Have you received anything?
I don't think so.
Okay,
No.
I will make sure I forward it to the whole. And certainly this, in my opinion, would probably be the time during a board meeting to discuss it if there's anything.
Yeah.
Because it would be my, actually, I don't know what the rules are, but I certainly want to reflect my votes. I mean, things may come up, but my intention, even with things that come up, will be to reflect what I believe to be the majority of the board rather than what Charlie Wilson thinks is best.
Right.
And so far as I know, our delegate, which is, I think, always been our president, is, I don't know of a situation where we've had a president who didn't attempt, at least, and in my opinion, in fact, act in a way that reflected at least a majority of the board, maybe not always the entire board. But because amendments can come up on the floor,
Right.
there's no time to consult with you all. But it'll be what I believe, as in much good faith as I can, what I believe to be. And so I think any discussion about any of the things and possible amendments or changes would be a good discussion to inform my vote, although I don't think there's any mechanism for you to tell we've never done it before, at least, to tell me how to vote, but I certainly want to reflect majority view, not Charlie Wilson's view. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and that's what I did last year, was just sent out what was sent by OSBA that would be.
I don't think we ever had a
discussed
discussion in a board meeting, but
No, I think I
Okay.
just asked if anybody had any
Okay.
feedback or anything that
Did
they
you
wanted
receive
to
any
share.
feedback?
No, I don't really remember.
Okay, right,
honestly.
yeah.
I'd have to go back and
all
look.
right. I don't recall whether I submitted any or not either, so yeah, I don't recall. But
I
But
know I
think-
sent it out, just so
but I think
everybody
before-
had the
yeah.
same information about what was gonna be discussed
Right.
during that delegate meeting.
And frankly, it might be best if it were done at the last board meeting in October, if we have a discussion, so it's closer to the actual vote, and we may be hearing things from other board members around the state about issues. But, you know, amendments that I would never anticipate, and I'm having presided over some of those as an officer of OSBA, you know, things come up that you have no time to discuss with your, so it's with your full board, so the delegates all have to exercise their own judgment as to how they're gonna vote. But I think the more information I have from you all,
Okay.
we're very limited as to how much discussion we can do, except in a setting like this. In fact, we can't have a discussion like this, except in a setting like this. All right,
So that was my first thing, just making sure that that was already in place. We need to have a discussion about Portrait of a Learner, because we need to decide what our participation is gonna be. So if there's gonna be more than two of us there, and I'll have Amy speak to this because she's the one to talk to, OSB, it's legal. We can't have more than two of us and engage in the process. Because different than today, but you know, today we didn't really actually talk about our school districts and things about our school, but this is about our schools and how our administration is gonna work and things like that. So the feedback that we got was that more than two of us cannot participate in the entire process. But if there's more than two of us that want to participate in the process, then we just need to observe. If there's just two of us that are participating in the process, then we can actively participate in the process. Am I relaying that properly?
Yeah, no, that's exactly.
Because of sunshine laws, it might.
well, I
course,
have questions about that, and actually, not to, I mean, I do teach the sunshine laws in my courses, but it depends on the format of it. If it's like it was today, and you're 100% right, there was nothing today. I don't see why we couldn't have all four been at the same table. We were all very careful. And for one thing, by being at different tables, we learned more collectively. And so the Portrait of a Learner is certainly directly ours. But if we're at different, I guess I'm going back to the mission vision, I'm going back to the various other community engagement things we've had. We can't speak to the whole group, we can't engage in discussion, but to the extent it's done at tables, as long as there's only one or two of us at each table, I don't see where there's a problem. The problem is if we try to have we try to convey to two other people on the board our view of what should be done. We've got serious sunshine issues. Is that inconsistent with what, you're talking about OSBA's council?
Yeah, and I can send you what they sent me.
Okay.
It specifically addresses, does a meeting of a community forum or levy committee become a Board of Education meeting if the majority of the members attend? And that's the question that's asked. And then, I mean, I could just read the response. It's just a paragraph, if you want, so we can discuss it right now. It says, it depends on the board members' actions. If board members are present only as observers and do not discuss board business, it is not a meeting under the Open Meetings Act. Caution is warranted, however, because some members of the public will not recognize this legal distinction. The usefulness of the presence of a third board member of 5 at a meeting may be outweighed by the negative perception of some community members. Also, if board members engage in discussion with one another about the public business of the public body at the meeting, it is possible for there to be an Open Meetings Act violation. OSBA recommends that board members be fully aware of the parameters of their participation at community meetings. A conservative approach would be to have fewer than a majority of the members present at such meetings. And so that's what, in my conversation with OSBA, that they had advised. And I think that's what we followed too during the last task force. I mean, Nikki and I were appointed to be the board representatives for the task force for that reason, so that it was just her and I, and maybe, I don't remember, we may have had somebody step in because one of us couldn't be there at a meeting, but be the ones that were always attending those meetings and then reporting back to the full board. So,
But I will just, I completely agree with you, Amy. And at the same time, we were in more of an observation role as well, but I think we did that for the purpose of exactly what that just said, for the sake of not appearing as if more of us were there participating in it was something that was would fall under the sunshine rules. But I still feel like as board members, I just want to make sure that I express that I feel like in this process, our role is one of observation, whether there's 2 of us there, 3 of us there, 4 of us there, or 5, that this is a community-driven process that's being started. And so, but yes, I agree. I think we should have 2 people. I would be inclined to treat it like we did the task force. We select 2 people to be our designated members, and then when you can't make it, there's someone else who attends on your behalf.
Yeah, and I guess that's, I mean, not to put Angie on the spot, but I guess that's a question too, is what do you want from us? Do you want us to be active participants in the process or observers, or because that may help us too figure out how we navigate this.
Yeah, something that may help you make this decision. There are 4 meetings and they build upon each other.
Right.
So it would be most beneficial for the same 2 board members to attend all 4 meetings versus coming and going.
Yeah.
Because if you don't attend the first 2 and attend the third, you may be a little lost at where we are in the progression.
And so I'm unable to attend the first meeting, so, I mean, I understand that piece of the
Yeah, it
process,
doesn't mean you
so.
can't pop in. You know, I welcome you if you're just observers to pop in whenever you want, but they do progress.
Yeah,
Okay.
I am able to and would be glad to, but if someone else feels strongly about attending the 4 meetings, I don't need to, so.
Can I ask a question? Like from a board standpoint, is there a significant difference between participating at a table or just observing?
I think of just observing, we don't say anything. We don't give any input. We don't give any feedback. That's how I would take it, that you're just really sitting at the table and listening
Yeah.
to what people are saying as opposed to giving
Yep.
feedback. And the reason I asked that question is because the graphic that Angie presented has board members, from what I assumed, don't tell my mother I assumed, what would be an active participant. Like, we are part of that community engagement. But then we have to decide if that's what we want to do or if we want to be observers.
Oh, I didn't
I
remember
guess
that.
from my seat though, I was thinking if there's almost 200 people there, right? And so as a board member, if 2 of you are engaging, like you have like one, like it's a very small amount of actual input, and potentially the ability for all 5 board members to be there would outweigh the engagement at the small group.
So you would say, you're saying.
Just to
what you're-
listen, you mean?
Let me make sure I hear what you're saying. That if all 5 of us are there observing, that is more beneficial.
Well, when we say observing, I mean, you're right. I mean, it's, so like if there's a small group discussion at a table, then, the board member wouldn't be an active participant. But I don't think that doesn't mean you're not there engaging with the 200 people, right? I mean, so I think to me, there's real value in having our Board of Education, as many that can be there, to see it, to see what's going on, to be present, to talk with people on the way in, to talk with people on the way out. Like all those sort of things that aren't necessarily engaging in the actual question that we might go through with Patel for Kids.
Okay.
But, and while our engagement voice would really matter, because there's 200 people's voices that are going to be heard equally, like I'd be fearful that we lose something if board members can't be there.
Okay. That's good feedback. Thank you.
Yeah, well, speaking only for myself, I see absolutely no legal problem with all 5 of us being there as observers. I mean, and that's consistent with lots of things this board has done in the 17 years I've been on the board, starting with the city of Worthington back in around 2008 or 9. Actually, it was in this room, did a large visioning. All 5 board members were here but we didn't speak. But then they broke out into small sections, and we did, but there were never more than 2 board members in one of those rooms. I think the vision and missioning, I think all 5 of us made it virtually all the meetings. And again, there was, but we never spoke to the larger group. We certainly didn't talk among ourselves. So I just don't see a legal problem. The problem would become if, I guess another, and maybe I wasn't supposed to be, but I remember I sat in on a couple of those facilities things when they were on Zoom. Some of them were on Zoom, and I know that a couple of them, there were 3 of us on. And I have no idea those were kind of hybrid. I think they were also being held at the high school. I was on, but I can remember a couple where there were 3 on. Again, none of us said a thing, and if there was a board member in person, I didn't hear a board member speak.
I mean, I think OSBA's guidance from what Amy read, and I think what they said was our most conservative approach would be such, right?
Yeah, and it says that if we're observers, that's
We can all
fine.
be
It's
there.
fine, right.
Yeah, so
I
that's the
actually,
very first sentence.
I
of it.
actually think, though, you could all be at separate tables and engage in conversation, as long as it's not with each other. But
And that's my reading of.
obviously, you guys have to decide how you want to handle it. But I think within sunshine law, that you're allowed to do that.
So Angie, did you anticipate us being active participants in that discussion, in the 4 meetings? That's not a trick question.
Well, based on what I know about the process in my conversations with Battelle for Kids, it is very engaging. You will be talking a lot, not necessarily you, but the table groups will be talking a lot with one another. They'll be working together. There's rotations around the commons area where you'll be engaging with other people beyond your table. So it's a lot of interaction. If you choose to just observe, certainly that's up to you.
Based on what Amy read from OSBA, it doesn't sound like we can participate at tables. Maybe I'm hearing it differently. Maybe I need to read it again.
Well, how about this? I will send this to however we want to do this. If you want me to send it to you, Charlie, I can copy Dr. Bowers and TJ. If you want to call Sarah Clark at OSBA and talk to her about what our format is and see what our best options are.
It doesn't seem like it's going to be a problem for the first one. Amy can't go to that one. She stated, I am not able to attend Wednesday. Charlie, you,
I RSVP to
Okay.
attend.
did you RSVP to attend? I don't know about you.
No, but I plan to.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't RSVP.
That's okay.
We'd stop you at the door.
I was being honest.
Well, I certainly don't want to violate
I don't either. That's where it's tricky.
open meetings laws. But, yeah. As long as, I'll read what they say, and I may call Sarah Clark up, but, all 5 of us go to football games, and there's often, at least around me, there's a lot of discussion about clearly school-related things, but I've never, ever had more than one other board member within hearing of me or of any other board members, and I can't believe that would be a violation of, that only 2 of us could show up if there's any chance that we would talk about it. And I think I see that as the same thing as tables. I mean, the important thing is that 2 other people don't hear any of us talk, would be my view, but we got to make the decision before the next board meeting. But as because Nikki wants to attend, and I think there's enormous benefit to the board and to the school district and the community for us all 5 to see what's going on. If our decision is none of us will just stand and watch, then at least I'll abide by we only have 4 of us here, but we could still make a decision as to what we're gonna do at the first one at least.
Well, the first one's Wednesday. I guess you would just, Nikki said she plans to attend, and you plan to attend.
And you plan to attend.
I do not.
Oh.
I will not
And
be
I
able
do
to
not
Oh,
attend
you
on
don't-
Wednesday.
Does
So
it-
I don't think it's
What
an
about
issue for
And
the,
Jennifer won't be in town.
Yeah, so it's not an issue for Wednesday.
Okay,
it's just for the fall.
It's for the
next
following
meetings.
3.
which is after, that's in October, is it the second one?
Yes.
Oh, is there another one in September? Before September 27th, then I assume. Okay,
Yeah,
I thought
October
it, the next was
3rd,
October, yeah.
25th, and then November 16th, because I did.
Okay,
submit
so I think
the
this is an issue we'll discuss at the September 27th meeting.
Okay.
So it's just gonna be Nikki and me at the
Wednesday.
Wednesday meeting?
Wednesday, yep.
Okay, gotcha. All right. Any other items?
That's it. That's all I got for you,
All right.
Charlie.
Amy?
I know Dr. Bauer sent to us student feedback session dates.
Mm-hmm,
And I'm assuming something will be circulated for
yeah, I'll
that
try to do that,
schedule.
yeah,
Okay,
yeah. I will circulate that,
okay. That
or
was,
actually, we're all here except for Jennifer, and I'll just contact Jennifer. Why don't you all email me what dates you're available,
okay,
and any dates that you're not available?
Okay.
And what you would prefer, and I will, if
Okay.
it works out, I'll try to coordinate that. If it doesn't, I'll get back to y'all. And then I'll communicate to Dr. Bowers.
Hey, and just speaking about that, as you work on those dates, on the far, I think, right column of what I sent you today, kind of lists who plans to lead that meeting. So think about, so different than what we've done in previous years. I think there's 4 or 5 of us that are going to lead meetings. And so beginning at least the conversation, something that is probably in the area that that person is responsible for. That doesn't mean that's where we'll end the conversation. Kids always take the conversation wherever they want to take it, and we want to be open to hear all that feedback. But if you see something that says Randy next to it, probably we'll start with something that's safety related or construction related to get impact on that. If you see something that's Toya related, probably we start with something about how people feel an inclusive environment or something that we're doing. If you see something within, so just be, as you look at that, if you have particular interest in areas, again, we're talking to our students. We may not follow the plan at all, but that's the idea of what is intended on those, when you see those names to the right, so.
You guys, I was gonna say, I just created a sheet. I'm just gonna share it with everyone, and everyone can put their availability.
Sounds great.
Okay, that way it's easier to track.
My inclination, though, is because we have 2 board members rotating off. I have not opened your email yet, Dr. Bowers. I got too many emails today, but I assume it's for the full calendar year, or school year?
Yeah, it's for the full school year. I think we start, so it's about a month from now. So I think our first setup was in October. I think there's a couple weeks in October where we've got 4 or 5 meetings. I don't have it in front of me. It goes through February or March. Thank you. So we have
My inclination is
9
for
or
us,
10 opportunities.
for us just to schedule up to December 31st and because we'll have 2 new board members whose calendars we certainly don't know or interests we don't know.
Right.
And let the next president
Okay.
do the final scheduling after. Does
yeah,
that
I
make
think that
sense?
makes sense.
Yeah. We did that. Didn't we do that with something else?
PTAC.
PTAC, yeah.
Yep.
So, because we gotta, or you all who are gotta involve the new board members, so. Yeah, because, there's no reason to schedule Amy and me beyond December 31st. And assume that the new board members can fill the dates were put in there. Okay, so I'll just go through that and leave from then on a blank. Anything else? Or I guess we're on Amy. Anything else, Amy?
No, I didn't have anything else. Thank you.
Nikki?
No.
Okay, I have nothing more. All right, the calendar now. Next Monday at 4:00, we will have a special meeting. We'll focus on governance issues and, the handbook and onboarding and orientation. Then,
Can I just ask a question about
Yes,
that?
you may.
So, do we have like a kind of agenda for how, like, what all we're hitting on? I know you just mentioned several things, board handbook, onboarding, like, are we starting with an outline for like onboarding? Or,
I plan on having,
okay,
well, my agenda was, or my outline was gonna be very, it would just say onboarding / orientation. To have that discussion.
I guess that's my question, is it just, like, should we just bring whatever ideas we have
Yeah, I
to the
think, yeah.
table? Or is there anything you want us to be thinking
Well-
about beforehand, or?
Well, the two,
Because I have a list that I've already created.
I have a list.
okay, I would urge you to bring
That's
them.
why I'm
Yeah,
asking,
please
like-
bring them. And I
Okay.
think it's gonna be open for discussion. And two issues, obviously, are when generally, obviously without knowing who those folks will be and what their schedules might be, and whether or not the two outgoing board members will be involved at all at the meetings. We're here, we can talk about here. My personal preference would be to have the outgoing board members involved, but that's, we're talking about myself, but a majority could certainly decide that that wouldn't be appropriate. We would certainly do it that way. But having talked to many board members around the country about how they do it, number one, the main thing they do is they do it very soon after the election, unless there's a likelihood of contested elections. And in fact, we're not the only state that has their state conference right the weekend after the election. This is really, I was going to bring this up because this is in the work session. Some have it before that, so that and also some have a board member kind of helping to shepherd the new board member at Capitol Conference rather than just sending them there. No idea.
Amazing.
It's like
I remember
being,
the first time I went to Kelly.
being put in front of a hurricane and say, you're on your own, do it. Would that be a fair metaphor?
Yeah,
You're
I
right.
would love
Here's
that. Yes,
the force of it. Yeah, that every board I've talked to, they have a board member coordinating with the new board member as
Buddy
opposed
up.
to just throwing, here's the Capitol Conference and go.
Yeah.
Which is how we've done, happened to both of you too. And so, and I guess any board candidates should know that Sunday and Monday and Tuesday after the election is the Capitol Conference. It's a very valuable learning experience. So, but getting the orientation in before then, and that also, I mean, any good orientation, at least my definition of good, would certainly involve heavy administrative involvement in terms of who the administrator is, what they do, and organization chart and things like that. But you guys have that. I didn't mean to drag out this meeting, but those are the kinds of issues that we need to discuss, what our preferred timing would be and so forth. All right, that's the work session on September 18th, and our next regular meeting is not on Monday, but as Dr. Bowers referred to in his presentation, because we are sensitive to holidays, we are not going to have this, I think it's Yom Kippur, I think, yeah. So it will be on that Wednesday, regular time, 6:30. And then the following board meeting, October 9th, we'll go back to our regular Monday, second Monday of the month at 6:30. Questions, comments about the calendar? If not, I would certainly, unless anyone else has anything else they want to say, I would certainly accept a non-debatable motion to adjourn the meeting.
So moved.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded that we adjourn the meeting, not being debatable. Mr. Ulrich, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Davis?
Yes.
Mrs. Hudson?
Yes.
Mrs. Lloyd?
Yes.
Mr. Wilson?
Yes. Motion passes. We are adjourned.